Yeah, probably wouldn't be a bad idea.
So, just so you know, I'm, if I don't get this finished tomorrow, I'm gonna take it with me and finish it. But this is all the ones that had non-participating vendors.
You're gonna take a nap.
Well, I'm not gonna take a nap. That's a waste of time. That's a waste of time.
So everyone, starting to let everyone in. So still got 3 minutes, so just hang tight with us and we'll be starting at 1 o'clock or a little after, just depending on how many people are still coming in around that time.
Hey, Ashley, were we
Yes.
supposed to get a manual?
No,
You believe
Okay.
I went through all of it?
Okay,
no, unfortunately not.
okay, just
Um,
double checking.
Yeah, yeah.
Cover me up. I start saying, please more, baby. You're getting really bad about it. Lay down. Put your legs down.
Thanks for the laugh, Laura. I'm sorry. I keep myself under control after that one. I think we'll give it a few more minutes here. I'm trying to see how many we have in compared to yesterday here, so. I think we're holding out about 80 for the past couple days, and we're at about 60 right now, so I'll give it a couple minutes here. Can you all see my screen okay? Slides for training. Okay.
Yes.
Yep.
Just check on advancing too. That looks good too.
Yes.
All right, so it looks like we're at about 70. So I'll go ahead and get started here. So thank you all for coming to day 3 of training today. And again, today we'll be focusing on the water program. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Ashley Aiken. I'm the LIWAP or Water Assistance Program Manager. And a little bit throughout, I'll also have Leah Smith with me. She's our monitor, and I think she's been an incredible, intricate part of this year and kind of shaping the program and what you know to be kind of acceptable and you know, on what we have kind of shaped as policy. So you'll hear from her throughout this training as well. So we'll go ahead and get started. We'll kind of do it a little bit like we did with Tom's yesterday. I think I'll go ahead and take the questions throughout, but I would like to have them only in the chat so that we can have them typed out and we can keep them so that we can keep track of them for future use as well. And then that'll also just keep things pretty streamlined as well. But I think just answering the questions as we go to make sure that we stay in line with the topic will work best. So we'll just have someone from our team when it comes to that time be taking those questions for me. So we'll go ahead and get started. It was working. Let's see. There we go. All right, so as you guys know, a lot of what the water program has been built upon has been the EAP program. So a lot of what we're continuing on with today is Tom's information from over the past couple days. I'm not going to repeat the same things that he has stated and presented over the past 2 days. But what I'm going to do is say, okay, the things that Tom presented in this way, or the things that EAP does, water does in the same way, or this is how water is different. And so that's kind of the plan for the things that are the same and the things that are different. So that's the kind of the first part of this. The second will be to go back over the LIWAP policies and procedures and anything that is going to be changing or staying the same for this upcoming year. The next will be going over some common mistakes and misconceptions that we've seen over the last year, kind of building upon that monitoring training that we did. You know, we may not get to all of it, but we'll get to as much of it as we can, because the main thing that we want to touch base upon is providing some training and information on the draft of the matrix. And I say draft only because it hasn't been formally approved, but we know that it's not like draft 1.0. It's almost in its final version. So we feel confident and comfortable giving it to you in a way that you can at least see what we're working with for the upcoming program year. And obviously it's something that's going to allow us to help more Hoosiers and hopefully take some of the burden off of you in a couple ways as well. We know that obviously it's going to be a little more work, but we know that those matrices kind of go on in the background in EAP Connect. So again, it'll help us get some more money out the door. It'll hopefully save you guys some complaints from people who aren't getting benefits right now, because now they'll be able to get some money, even if they are not in arrears. So I think that's going to be the biggest saving grace for everyone, is just not getting those complaints. I just wanted to go back over this just in case there's new people. Again, I already introduced myself, and then there's Leah's email address as well. And just in case, I know sometimes it can be because the LIWAP email inboxes are so close. Just remember that the water program email address is the water@IHCDA. So use that for all communications, unless it's something that needs immediate attention. That is above and needs escalation, then obviously you may directly email the manager, myself. All right, just to reiterate, again, anybody who's new and where this funding is coming from and the fact that it's temporary, just a reminder that it did come out of the COVID-19 pandemic. However, they don't have to show a COVID impact in order to be able to receive the funding. It's just that they knew that individuals were struggling because of the COVID pandemic on paying not only obviously energy bills, but their water utility bills as well. So we've got those two funding sources. As you all should know, currently you all are spending, I don't think there's anyone that has touched appropriations yet still. So you guys are all still spending out of that bottom American Rescue Plan Act funding, the ARPA funding. And then hopefully pretty soon, within the first, couple months of the program, we'll be able to get into that appropriations bill funding. So just, I'm keeping an eye on that. Your fiscal people should be keeping an eye on that so that we can ensure that once you're ready to open up that second budgeted funding stream, that we can do that. And if anyone needs to talk through that more, fiscal wise, we can do that as well. But again, it's a temporary program at this time. We still don't know anything more set in stone about it. We don't know we haven't been giving any more information. Anything else that you would know, we don't know either. So right now ran through September 2023 still. Again, I just wanted to talk through some of the similarities and differences. We can just kind of breeze through these because these have not changed. The similarities have not changed. The differences kind of have changed a little bit. But the application start date, the launch date, all of that is going to be the same. So everything that Tom went over the past couple of days in terms of when you guys can start accepting applications and when you can start processing applications, all of that is exactly the same. Okay, everything is exactly the same. Eligibility and documentation requirements, exactly the same. Obviously all of you are here. You're the same people providing the same services as our LSPs for both programs. And then the same established processes, procedures, etc. All of that exactly the same. So, the requirement of having a location to be able to submit documentations per county, all of that is the same. And then at the federal level, again, the same thing. We're looking at the Office of Community Services and, funding coming through the same sources. So that being said, especially coming into this year and how we're changing the funding and how applicants can get water funding, we really, really stress, please, that they apply for both. That they apply for both energy and they apply for water/wastewater, because there is absolutely no reason why, especially moving into this year with the matrix, that they would not want to, and they would not qualify for both, because they do qualify for both. And now with not just looking solely at arrearages, they will get a benefit of some sort. So, and again, we'll cover that once we get to the matrix. Am I moving too fast? Are we good? Paced. Okay. I don't hear anything, so, all right. All right, some of the differences, and I'm gonna kind of stop at a few of these because I want to make sure that it's clear, but I think we already know the main difference being a temporary program right now and a permanent program. Water's temporary, energy has been around for decades, so that's a permanent program. The second part being, this is kind of with a grain of salt cautionary part. Households, obviously, with energy are proactively told to apply. At this point, with the wastewater and water, we have kind of been telling them, you have to have a past due balance in order to receive that assistance. So that's still out there. I think a lot of, unfortunately, a lot of our applicants will still have that in their mindset, but because of the matrix, they will be able to receive assistance if they're not behind. So in terms of the regular quote unquote benefit that we're going to be giving out, that does have to be an arrearage form, but as you'll see through the matrix, it's not necessarily a behind situation. Tom, am I saying, I mean, I don't mean to pull you in this, but I don't know that I'm saying it the best way. Because I don't know that regular benefits is what I mean by that.
Yeah, I mean, I think with the introduction of the matrix, I think once we get to the matrix, it'll become a little bit more clear to everyone. But
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, with the introduction of the matrix, there's definitely going to be kind of a benefit that everyone is going to be able to qualify for, regardless of whether they are actually running in arrears or whether they're current.
So it's kind of like, with a grain of salt, they do still need to be behind in a way, but they also can get funding if they are not behind as well.
Yeah, the matrix, if I'm understanding it correctly, the matrix that you and Leah have done such a great job setting up basically addresses roughly what one would expect to be like the current month of charges. So at the very least, even if they're not in arrears, they can most likely get that current month
Right.
addressed.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I just want to make sure I was saying it the best way possible.
For sure.
Not crossing words or terminology that you all are already used to. So okay, so and then the next part being we can't purposefully create a positive balance. And again, that's going to seem a little weird when we look at the matrix, but the key word in this whole thing is going to be the word purposefully. We cannot purposefully create a positive balance. And I know that's not exactly on this slide because they tell us at the federal level we cannot create a positive balance, but just know it's the word purposefully create a positive balance. A big difference between the two is that water can pay for deposits where energy assistance cannot. Water assistance does not have a crisis designation per se, so that's a huge difference between the two. Energy assistance has moratorium. We do not. That's another big thing. Water does not have moratorium protection. And then the last difference just being that, and Tom, you can correct me if you've changed this, but for water assistance, for you to seek a waiver, for you to ask for permission to go above, it's $2,500. For energy assistance, it's $1,000. Is that still correct?
That was actually under ARPA.
Okay.
So yeah, that has gone away at this point. The crisis is a hard cap with no waivers, and
Okay.
it's 500 per utility, 1,000 per household.
Okay, so when I send these out, I will be sure that this over 1,000 assistance right here is not there. This is only in place. The only reason, and we'll talk about it on a future slide as well, but this is only in place just because the over $2,500 in assistance for water typically means that there's been a leak or something else has happened. And so we have to be very careful on what we pay. So I'll get into what you need to send us and what is required of that for us to just look it over. It's nothing strenuous. It's nothing crazy. We just need to double check it and make sure we're not paying something we can't pay. So yeah, I will make sure that is not there when you get these slides. All right, some process details that are kind of the same, and I think especially some things that definitely need to be worked on for water on our side is over here with these benefit letters. But some of the combined efforts that you'll continue to see throughout the rest of the summer and into fall, that outreach and marketing, including that marketing roundtable that we have set for you all. You know, that'll be coming up. The application obviously is one application, so that's combined with EAP. And again, that's mainly to just try to make sure that we get as many applicants as possible to get this funding out the door to help as many people as possible, and to make it as easy as possible for these people to apply and not make it two separate applications and different outreach if it doesn't need to be. And some of the separate tasks, you know, the internal processes, obviously you've seen plenty of that this past year. And then the benefit letters, you know, that needs to be worked out a little bit more to where the benefit letters are going out on behalf of water. So that's something that, again, you see it here, but I think it needs to be, we'll be working on that a little bit more to ensure that that's going out. So, and especially with the benefit matrix now, not only being for EAP, but also for water, it's something that those have to be separated. So different funding sources. Okay. Right. And I leave this up for Emily Kay because she created this, and I think it's a great visual of kind of how we go through the process. So, you know, we look at our outreach and our joint efforts for our LIHEAP and our EAP water outreach and application. And you can kind of see how she has it split up to, you know, here's everything that anyone who's applying for LIHEAP that would have with or without water, the things that would transpire. You would have an income verification, the benefits determination, and the transmittal process. And then that categorical eligibility would automatically qualify them for the benefits, and then it'd go through the benefit determination and the transmittal process. So that's kind of the positive of all of this is, you know, that categorical eligibility, meaning that, you know, once they apply for that LIHEAP, we know they're eligible, then they're automatically categorically eligible for the water program. Okay, so that's kind of just a nice little visual that she came up with, showing you that how they kind of stay together and then where they separate out. All right. So over the course of this year, this slide has gone from water, wastewater deposits, disconnection, reconnection fees, and that's probably all we had when we first started training last year. Very, very few things on this slide. But as you can see, over the course of the year, we were able to really parse out what we can and can't cover. And so we were able to get a lot more specific by contacting the feds and talking to you all about what you were seeing on the bills, and not just the very overall topical areas or categories. So this has grown. This has actually even grown probably since you last saw it in the monitoring training with this one right, with this one right here. So you now see that stormwater is an allowable charge. So we have water, wastewater, stormwater, fire hydrant flush fees, and those could be also represented as fire protection, hydrant charge fees, you know, and when in doubt, you can always check with the vendor. and then check with us. Any disconnect or reconnect fees are applicable, and a lot of times we know that those will come after. So you may have already gone through and done the benefit on these individuals, and then when it goes to be time for them to actually be reconnected, they may need more funding, and that's okay. And I think we talked about that in the last monitoring training we did. Taxes, deposits, costs associated with property switching from septic tanks to local sewer systems. So we can't cover the new installment of the lines or removal of the old tanks because those can be very expensive. All of this is very expensive, we've seen, but we can cover anything that happens after they're hooked up with the new sewer company. So we do see a lot of the late fees that come from that, and they can be quite extensive. We've seen tens of thousands of dollars, and we can actually cover those because of what has occurred with the switching of the septic tanks to the local sewer systems. And then sanitary service, only if the vendor defines it has wastewater or dirty water and needing a cleaning. So the stormwater is probably the newest one to this list. I checked that again just today before we even got on this call because I said that I wanted to make sure one last time that they were okay with stormwater. And they kind of left it up to us. And so I'm going to say one less thing to worry about, and let's just cover that. So stormwater is included. Any questions on that at all?
Hey, Ashley, I know Brad been putting, when did stormwater become an allowable charge?
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to be even more explicit on that because it is goofy.
Sure. Yeah, sure. So I would say, so last year I got guidance, and I kept track of everything. I have emails that said, I directly emailed and I said, what about stormwater? And they said, no, it is not an allowable charge. And then they came out right at the end of our program year and said stormwater could be an allowable charge. But it was right when we were wrapping up. And so there would have been no purpose at that point. So like I think that was in March or April, I think they stated that. But at that point it was as a bundled bill. And I forget the other terminology, but then again today I said, okay, I want one last, I said, I'm training today. I want to know stormwater, yes or no, can we? And they said, it's kind of up to you on that. So it's interesting. That's for the feds. I mean, I'm getting that from HHS. So yeah, Brad, go ahead.
Okay, so in our monitoring, we got we had to pay back $6
Mm-hmm.
for stormwater, and the application was in March. So that is the reason.
Yeah, it
I
came
need to
after
make it
that.
very clear before we get any more questions about that, is that we considered it an unallowable charge for the season of 2022. Moving
Mhm.
forward
Okay.
for 2023 monitoring, it is going to be considered an allowable, but I cannot halfway through go, oh, the Fed said it's, because they initially, I have documents that say it's no. So I
Okay.
cannot take from one agency and not, you know what I mean? Like halfway through, because just like you had to do a payback, someone else had to do a payback months before you for that too. So we had to be fair and just cut it off for next season.
I totally
Okay.
agree and understand. I was just like, whoa, wait a minute. I know
Yeah, no.
the
So
other day Lisa told me about stormwater, so that's
Yeah.
why I wanted to just verify because she's not on and I'm
No.
taking notes. So
Yes,
okay,
it was unfortunate that that was something that they were going back and forth on, but we had to make a clear decision between season to season with that because it had already been monitored.
gotcha.
Yeah,
Thank you.
it was something that at that time, like if it would have been, I don't know, even December, I might have said maybe, but at that point, Leah had already started monitoring, and it was so late that it just would have caused more chaos than it would have done good. For it to happen in April when we're done in May. Because that also would have caused us to have to go back, because then it, you know, we would have had to have people go back to old applications as well. So yeah, so that, yeah, 2022 season, yeah, done. Moving forward, 2023 season, you may do stormwater. So pretty much I don't think there's anything else on this list that applies to, because I think everything else happened early enough on that you were able to correct it and not have paybacks if there was anything on this list. So yeah, but that's a great question. Thank you, Brad. Okay. Yeah, okay. All right. I think that's it for that one. Okay, and if anything else comes up in terms of this, you know, worst case scenario, just always ask. It's not gonna be harmful to ask, because sometimes these, just as you guys have seen, and just from this growing list alone, things are worded differently in each county and each city and different municipalities. Everything can be worded differently. So please do not hesitate to ask. We're not going to think it's a stupid question by any means, because sometimes I'm having to turn around and ask our program specialist. So it's better to be safe than sorry, and I'm happy to answer any questions around any of those. So, okay. All right, can I get my mouse to the right place? There we go. All right, unallowables. This has not changed since our last monitoring training. So still the same thing. Trash, which usually can be anything from sanitation, solid waste, any extra bins that you might see on there, street maintenance, clean air fee, insurance, repairs, infrastructure fees, well water or private, and septic. And again, if you are unsure of what a charge is and you don't want to contact us for it, the vendor websites, Leah especially has found that is a excellent resource. Especially if it's just like, you know, for example, when I first started here, it sounded stupid to me, but I was like, what the heck is a clean air fee? How does that have anything to do with water and wastewater? I didn't understand. So I had to ask the vendor. I still don't understand how it has anything to do with water and wastewater, but I asked. So I at least got a response from them on what it is to them. So it does not hurt to ask them or have us ask them. Does not bother us one bit. Also, you finding the ones that you're not sure about, send them to us as well. That helps us add that to these lists on both allowable and unallowable. And it also can bring it to nationwide attention. So if it's something that needs to be added to the growing list, and they need to take into consideration so that it's less work if this does become a permanent program. You know, with these bundled bills, we know that that's what's making it much more difficult with all these extras in there. So if they're seeing what all goes into these extra bills, then maybe they can do something to assist us in that if it does become a permanent program. All right, kind of going back a little bit to kind of processing the apps and how it relates to EAP. Income eligibility, guess it's kind of off a little bit. Same as EAP, 60% SMI. Again, we already did the categorical eligibility with EAP. If the applicant is applying for EAP, process within the EAP guidelines. If it's water only, process it as received. But as I've said, please ensure that they are at least being suggested to apply for both. I don't know, Leah might have a better idea. I'm not exactly sure how many water only apps we received. I'm sure it was very, very few. But we really don't want to see that on either side. You know, an EAP only app, especially going into this, into the matrix. We don't want to see an EAP only app or a water only app. Okay. All right. Here are some benefit determinations, the basics of that. And again, kind of just stepping back, looking at what we can cover, and then here's going into the application. So we can, again, cover the arrearages, the deposits, the reconnection fees. We can't purposefully, there's where that purposefully word is, create that positive forward balance. And then when we're looking at the arrearage and when we look at the matrix, which you'll see, we're going to be looking at the exact amount on the bill, but we're going to take out those unallowables. So you'll be looking at that for both the matrix and the arrearage. All of the documentation is the same as the EAP. So like I said, we're always trying to keep things as much the same as we can. So you can see that list there. Only thing that differs is when you get to the bill, the type of bill. Obviously you need the water or wastewater bill or both. If they're separate vendors, obviously you need both bills, the water and wastewater bill. And then any other documentations like the landlord affidavits or utility affidavits as required, according to the circumstances. So, but all that other type of information is exactly the same. Yeah. As for the benefit level, like I said, it's going to be based on the bill at the time of application. I think that was probably one of the biggest issues that we've seen over the past year that we've tried to kind of go back and reiterate and ensure that we do the best job possible at getting. I know it was difficult this year because we had so many vendors coming on at different times. So sometimes it was hard to get a bill for someone who applied in December, but yet the vendor didn't come on until April. Even, you know, if that applicant didn't provide you that bill when they applied. So it's going to be very important this year to really try to get that bill at time of application to really keep that consistency and fairness of, you know, these individuals not letting themselves get behind. I mean, that's not what the program's set up to do, is to allow them to get behind as possible and then come back for the benefit. But that will be the bill at time of application for both the arrearage and the current bill that we'll be using for the matrix. Another new change for this year, there's no minimum, so you don't have to worry about a $20 minimum anymore. So that's gone. And then the maximum of 2,500 does stay. And again, the only reason for that is because we want to make sure that it's not due to something like a leak or something we cannot pay, because that's a pretty high bill for it to just be someone behind on their bills. So if the total wastewater or water arrearage plus the fees is greater than the 2,500, you must submit a waiver request to IHCDA, which is nothing more than just an email seeking approval from the LIWAP manager, which is myself, including basic info, which is just saying, hey, I need a approval. The bill is over 2,500. You can even put the exact amount if you would like. And then the biggest thing is to attach a copy of the bill. Because a lot of times I was having to go back and ask for a copy of the bill. So if we can just save that step and make sure that with that, you go ahead and attach that copy that shows that it's a bill that's over $2,500. Then once you have that approval from me, it's just that basic email saying, yes, I approve. then make sure that you put that approval email back into the client file so that you have that. Thinking I might want to, well, actually, no, I think I'm gonna hold off on a couple of these questions here. 'Cause I think there's a couple slides that those will be better pertain to. So. Any questions on that specifically? Being that no minimum anymore at all? I know that there was some confusion. Most people caught, you know, that you guys were supposed to be doing $20, but some of you were still hanging on to that $50 for some reason for a little while. So now there's none, so that's good. One less thing to worry about. No? Okay. Maybe if someone from the IHCDA team could kind of monitor the chat and see if there's some that would be those questions that would be best monitor or answered now, or if we should wait. And I'm happy to answer whatever now.
I would go ahead and answer the 2 cents question.
Yes,
What,
go
what's
ahead.
your thought on that?
Okay. Yeah. Okay. If a bill shows past due amount of 2 cents, can we pay the 2 cents?
I mean,
Yes.
mhm.
Because especially with what you're going to see with our matrix, you'll find that they won't just be receiving 2 cents. It'll be in addition to. So, yeah. Now, if we didn't have a matrix, that would be a tough call. But since we're going to have a matrix in place, you won't just be sending out a bill for 2 cents or a payment for 2 cents. Yeah, let's go. I mean, we can go ahead if you, Leah, if you want to go ahead and up to the other questions.
It looks like there's some questions about included in the rent, so I don't know if you want to wait on those.
Yeah, let's
So
wait on
I've
that
been,
one.
okay.
What about the Carla's?
Let me see.
Can the EAP application serve as a default that they are applying for water and we vet all applications for it as opposed to them specifically having to mark that they are applying for water? Tom, are you still on here by chance?
He stepped away for a minute, Ashley.
Okay. Carla, let me check on that. Just because it is kind of like we're
I can
I
at least put it.
think I know why she kind of is mentioning that, because
sure.
they have an access that not everyone has access to. So like for the majority of their clients that they serve, they have citizens, so it'll be really easy for them to get the water.
Okay.
Whereas it's not that case for other LSPs, because they don't have access to a portal or anything like that. I would say, in my opinion, and once again, you can check this with Tom as well. In my opinion, if they fail to check water but turn in a water bill, then you can assume that they are applying for water.
Yeah, I agree with that. I know that we had a lot of cases where LSPs emailed me throughout the season, and I said as long as they submitted the bill, then I was okay with that. Now, if they didn't do anything, they didn't check it, and they didn't submit a bill, then that was different. Or if they checked the box but didn't submit the bill, I gave some time or at least some leniency to get that bill. But yeah, I agree with that. But yeah, I'll check into that just to make sure. There you go, Tom, sorry. Just to make sure, but I think that that would be okay. Because the only problem being is if they were also septic, you know, or on their private well or something, that could put you through a wild goose chase. For no reason. Maybe. We're looking at Carla James' question.
I also think that it's going to be talked about in our, like my monitoring slides about statuses, because that goes back to that, when to get a bill, when not to worry about the bill, things like that. So it will be kind of more specified.
Okay. All righty. Well then, let's just keep trucking on then. All right. Application processing. Again, same processing as EAP, but pretty much everything. All applications are pretty much EAP applications first. That's kind of the basis and what we kind of the terminology for it. It comes in as an EAP application first. So the only time it's processed as water is if it's water only. And again, we should really be encouraging them not to do that. Once EAP eligibility is determined, then you should have 48 hours to determine the water benefit if the vendor is participating. Okay, and I did see, and I think it's a good time to go to this question, but we also do have a slide on it about attempting to bring on those non-participating vendors. So I'll answer that question as well. But again, that's if they are participating 48 hours. If it's non-participating vendor, then you'll see that non-participating still. And what we have been, you know, trying to encourage you to do over the past several listening calls and monitoring is because we're doing our best to try to get them on. You know, it's either they're slow to do it or we're still just not getting them. You know, make a note on the file. Contact us with the vendor information so that we can continue trying, you know, even if it's the 10th time you've told us, it's okay. We understand you're just trying to get them, you know, on board. If we haven't already, we'll create a placeholder that will be utilized until we're able to bring that vendor onto the program. And then we will contact the vendor for that MOA placement. And so that'll be kind of the process of us still trying to bring them on. And then we send out the notification of participating vendors in your territories every Monday. If you do not receive an email with that, that means there's no new participating vendors and your vendor list is remaining the same. Okay. Going to the chat for Hannah. Will there be an attempt to get non-participating vendors from last year to participate? We only had one vendor in our entire county out of 12 or so. Hannah, yes. Because I hate to say this, I'm not as familiar with you or your agency. Please send me your list. I probably have it, but 1 out of 12, that scares me. And that is what we are trying to kind of work on through this summer. We do have a list that has been sent to us from each LSP that provides us with the non-participating vendors that they know of in the areas. But that doesn't mean we know all of them. So especially if you have them and you know that they're on bills, send them our way no matter what. So yes, please feel free to send me that list of the 11 vendors that you have at least. And I will, or we will work on getting them. On that note as well, the ones that are, the one, and it's on the IURC website, but the ones that are regulated under IURC, we have started to have good success with those that are not already on, which most of them are, but those that aren't on, by stating that we're working with the IURC, they are now starting to come on board. So even if they are smaller ones, the good part is we're starting to have those. So that'll help a little bit as well. Let me see if I put this on here. Hang on real quick. Okay. I don't know if I have it anywhere, so I'm just gonna say it in case I don't. One other thing, part of the NP vendors and kind of making that connection. If it's a vendor that you have like that small town connection with, large town connection with, it's your neighbor, whatever. I don't care how you know them. We've also had really good success with that. So in a professional sense of doing that e-connection, an email, and say, hey, you know, this is Ashley. She's the manager for this assistance program. And, you know, just doing that drop can help significantly. So anytime you can do that, we can definitely continue trying to build on that relationship. So that's worked as well. And yes, Lisa, Lisa Castle, I will make sure you are on that. And if you are not anything like that, Emily Scott is no longer with us. So, I mean, she's with the IURC now. So, if you weren't getting on certain email chains that you think that you need to be on, email me and let me know so that I can ensure that when whoever takes over that emailing, that you are a part of that. So for example, Lisa said that she wasn't on the emails of approved vendor lists. So if that's something that you feel you need to be on, please let me know. All right. I'll kind of go through this quickly because I know that Tom either already did touch base on it, or I think did touch base on it, or is going to. Just the processing of the applications. You guys all already know this, so I don't really need to, but you know, for water only applications, the rules are the same as EAP. You have 55 days to process the application. If the application is incomplete, send them the notice so that they have that 14 days to complete it. And then that gives you a little scenario to ensure that they have that opportunity to submit the documents. After 14 calendar days, if they have not returned, or if they do return the documents, then you accept it. If they don't, then that's a hard denial and you can move forward. Okay. And just breezing through because I know he's already covered this. If you have a client whose water disconnect issue is severe because we don't have that crisis kind of language or determination that you can work through like EAP does, you are welcome to expedite that client as long as you can do so within the confines of the EAP rules. But if it is a water only client, you still have to operate as in the order it has been received. Because we still, even though we're bringing in this matrix, we aren't bringing in like a crisis determination. We still aren't allowed to operate that way. Okay. So this is going to kind of sound probably not the way I mean it, but the bills for the benefits, okay, because again, here's where we really start to differentiate away from EAP completely, because the biggest difference being the benefit and what they're going to receive is just completely different than EAP. So we know that with water, the bill is what you're focused on. So when I say look at the bill, I'm not meaning it in any condescending way. It's just the bill tells you everything you need to know. And if it doesn't, then unfortunately we have to get a hold of the vendor. But what we've tried to do is utilize Leah and the tools that she has created to help you So that if you can take the bill and put it into the tool, then you don't have to call the vendor. You know, there's other things that you can utilize. So that's kind of what I mean by looking at the bill and just really utilizing the bill as your tool itself as well, as much as you can. And just try, you know, learning, it's been hard because you guys had a lot thrown at you with this program. And so learning the bill and the names and the line items on the bill, you know, that would have given us a key into all of this, but that takes time itself. So, like I said, we're just going to try to give you over these next few slides some of the tools and things that we've learned throughout this past year, and hopefully we'll just continue to build on it this year. And you know, like I said, with the tools that Leah's created, and then with the matrix, hopefully continue to make things easier on you all. Okay. So I have what I've done here, and I'm not sure it's the best process, but what I've done is kind of taken the monitoring slides that we kind of went through to discuss the misconceptions, the difficulties, to kind of try to recap those types of things that we've had throughout this past year, and allow Leah to share anything more. And we can skip over some of these, but I've just kind of wanted to reintroduce them again and kind of go over them again. So, and then the last part would be jumping into the matrix. So I definitely want time for the matrix. That's key. But I also wanted time for Leah to kind of revisit the things that she saw this year. And any misconceptions, any mistakes we were seeing, just to quickly go over to help going into this next year. And Leah, if you want me to skip over anything, you just say skip and I'll skip.
Okay. I mean, late fees are going to be the same moving forward as they were this season. So you can take the late fees because there are some bills that consider that part of the past due balance. There are some that consider it the current charge. I would ask that you pay attention to the bill though, and if it is under that current charge listing, that you probably shouldn't take it. But if you do take late fees, I just ask that you stay consistent. Indiana American Water bill, their late fees are listed on that first page. And I was just seeing that some intake would take it and some intake would not. So when it comes to something like that, then I have to either decide if I want to comment on every single one they did do or every single one they did not do. So if we stay consistent, then I can mention it to you like, hey, I noticed that you guys stay consistent with taking the late fees from Indiana American Water, but your intake staff on this one application did not take it. So can you go ahead and add it on to their benefit? And that keeps it fair for every applicant, for whether it be, you know, $2 fee, $5 fee, big fee, small fee. It just keeps it consistent for everybody being eligible for the same thing. And that's usually per vendor. So again, some vendors just list it out in other account activity. You decide if that's what you want to take. Some put it under the current charges, some put it under the previous balance. So I'm asking for your discretion in that sense, but if you take it, it just needs to stay consistent, just like it was this season. And we just encourage that you put that in your internal controls and processes so that you know that moving forward, so you can keep that consistent with your intake staff. Okay.
Okay. Status, do you want to talk about this or no?
So with this status, so we want to keep it within these four: incomplete, denied, approved, non-participating. When it comes to a non-participating vendor, so there are vendors that have considered themselves, they're not going to do it at all. They're not going to participate. Those are going to stay as non-participating. The reason for that is you cannot deny an applicant because their vendor is refusing to participate, because they are still eligible. They're still an eligible household. They're still eligible for water. They're probably not going to get it, but it's still non-participating. When it comes to an application that's approved, but they're pending a non-participating vendor, we're still communicating with the vendor, trying to get them active. I ask that you put that as incomplete or non-participating, because if you put it as approved, you may not know to go back and add a claim to that when they do become active, and that's what I found in monitoring. Same with and then with denied, pretty straightforward. It's denied if they're ineligible. If they have a current balance, well, last year it was if they were 0 previous balance, they were denied. This year is going to be a little bit different with the matrix, so we're just going to have to come back to this after we look at that matrix, because it's going to be a little bit different. And approved, again, approved is they're approved and they have claims listed on there. You're done with the application. You do not have to do anything else. So that's just what I'm trying to keep it as this season, so that I do not find approved applications that still have a non-participating vendor on there and are awaiting claims, because it just gets confusing. And also there was one other thing with the non-participating vendor, but again, when we go back to the matrix, I'll probably remember what I was going to say, but we're just trying to keep the statuses. We don't want blank statuses. We cannot have that. We want to make sure that we are accounting every single application. We know what happened with it as far as water, so we know moving forward when the program does or does not go forward, we know what we need to do for data. And yeah, so far so good.
Yes, and Brad just mentioned, and this is overall, not to you specifically, Leah, that any communication regarding any updates or upgrades with EAP Connect be reiterated to the group. And I'm just reading through these just to make sure I'm covering all of them, and we'll make sure that we're taking notes of all of these.
I remember what I was going to mention now.
Go ahead.
Okay, so going back to the question about if they marked water, if they did not mark water. So again, if they did not mark water, but they gave you a water bill, kind of like citizens, water's already there, you can consider that for a water benefit, and you can consider that as a water application, even if they did not mark it. However, if they mark the water, they mark that they're applying for water, but do not give a bill, I still am expecting that you try to get that bill. And if you attempted to, there needs to be a note in there, because you cannot deny an application for water if they put that they're applying for it and then there's just nothing in there about water. So I saw that a lot. It's not applying for it if the box is not marked and there's no water bill, but if their box is not marked or the box is marked and there's no water bill, you need to attempt to get that water bill before you can deny it, because we need to show, like, our incomplete letters need to say, hey, we're reaching out to get the water bill plus blah, 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 blah. So it was just seen a lot that it was denied when it shouldn't have been.
And I think the NP vendor on the status, I think that's already there. And I think Brad was saying that they weren't aware of that, and then Elaine's asking, so there will be one. So
yeah, it's at the very bottom. So I was unaware of the change for a while in mid-season. We did not get told that it was added in there either. So it kind of just popped up randomly. So I just started making note of it on monitorings if that was a issue that I found. So if you didn't get told about it in monitoring, then it just wasn't an issue that I saw.
It wasn't like anything you were getting dinged on. It was just like, right, hey, here's a tool that you can use for it. And then
go
ahead.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Sorry, I was reading Laura's before I read Elaine, so we could start with Elaine. Yeah, non-participating vendor is on the status. It's just at the very bottom. So I just don't think you see it right offhand. You might have to scroll, which may not have been something that you've done before. So again, they added that in. And then what status should be used for those on well water or water included in rent? We're still trying to get that water denial input into the dwelling section where you input the water and wastewater, that is what they're being denied for. It would say well water and then denied for not eligible. So which would then transfer over to the status.
We know it feels kind of weird to deny and not quite appropriate choice to deny them based on that. And also it'll help give us better data to provide to the feds in a different way to say, look at all these people that we could be helping, but they're on well water, or they're, and to also show how many are included in rent. Brad, go ahead.
So in the previous year or current year that we just finished, I would always deny them if they applied for EAP and Water. I would always deny the water because they wasn't in past due. But we were told in training to still enter the current information for data purposes. So moving forward, we're still going to be entering past due and current information in the dwelling tab, correct?
Yeah. Yep.
Yes, it's going to be stressed that the importance of continuing to fill those sections out because the matrix is, it doesn't, I don't want to say it relies, but you're going to see like where it's going to be helpful to make sure that those sections are filled out correctly.
Okay.
So
I just wanted to make my notes correctly
Yeah.
for Lisa, so that's why
Yeah.
I'm asking. Okay,
yes.
Thank you.
So,
Brad, you're such a suck up. No, but yeah, the first time around, we were kind of doing it, the current charges, because we wanted to see what would happen if we did need a matrix, because we needed to see like what those current charges would even look like. Because if we weren't getting enough bills that would show the current charges, it would be difficult for us to, or well, at least with it having it in our own system, that current charge was able to be pulled for us to say, okay, well, what would a current charge look like if we want to do a matrix? Like how much, what is the current charge look like across the state of Indiana, so that we can get a decent amount of money out, without loading people's accounts down with too many credits and ticking off the vendors and, making it too much of a problem. So that's kind of why that was started. And then now we're moving into actually, we'll need it for sure. So you're already in the habit. So that's good. All right. The dwelling page.
so that's a little bit about what we were just talking about. So this season it's going to be very important that we stay away from putting other MP and we put those placeholders, or honestly we leave it blank. So if you have citizens and they have water and sewer, you want to put the water information in as citizens and the sewer information as citizens. This year it was okay to put water as citizens and leave it alone. Now if they don't have a sewer bill, you leave the sewer blank. But it's just important that this year we fill those sections out completely, and then we stay away from other MP, because as most of you know, we had to go through and find a lot of those, and it probably was not fun to fix some or all of those. So I just want to make sure moving forward we start off strong without using other MP.
And keep in mind that as we move towards the actual start of the year, and as we are finishing really nailing down the manual, we can continue to have conversations. This is just kind of, we want to make sure that we're getting all of this out to you, and that we're interacting, because this is only the second year of this program. We do want it to continue, but we've learned a lot this year. And so we are kind of, taking this as an opportunity to regroup and, go back over what we know is in place and what we learned. And then also now what we're doing to move forward, to make sure that we get the money out the door and that you guys aren't sitting on non-spent money. So, okay. I do want to answer, I think Hannah, if a non-participating vendor begins participating midway through the season, do we need to go back and award benefits to clients who are now eligible, or do we just let it go? Yes, you do need to go back and award the benefits to clients who are eligible. That actually goes through even this year at this point. So we had just recently one come on, and if there are applications still sitting there from this year that had eligible applicants with them as a vendor participating, then we are allowing them to go back and issue those benefits. Now, obviously, at some point, we've got to stop that. And I mean, going into the next year, we can't continue, leaving that open for the entire time. But I don't know that we've said, okay, this is when we stop doing that over for the 2022 program year.
So we're getting the questions about the vendors and the information and placeholders. So the placeholder is put in place because it is going to be what we use when the vendor becomes active. So Citizens Energy, if it had NP at the end of it, we are going to use Citizens Water is what we use. That is the name that we are planning on using. That's where we're going to input the information. It just has an NP at the end of it until the MOA comes in. So if you see a vendor not listed in that, we need you to send that to us so we can create that. So that when you put that information in those dwelling sections of water and wastewater, the automatic claims will go. So you shouldn't have to go back and do them by hand if you put that information in. Does that make sense? So dwelling page says current charges, previous charges, the vendor, the account number, everything. So if it says MP at the end of it, when that MP comes off after we put the MOA data in and it becomes active, those claims get automatically added to your claim section. So as long as, but when I was saying use blank, that just means if you're looking at a bill and it says water, and there's no wastewater and they didn't give you a bill for wastewater, you leave it blank. So you just don't put anything in there because they do not have a sewer bill. Does that help? But Brad, you can ask your question.
Yeah, yes, it does a little bit. Other than what are we going to put the status at? Are we going to leave the status as in progress until we see that you put the placeholder in?
We could use the in progress status for that, but so that can be something I write down and talk to the team about. That could be possible. Yeah.
What if we are getting close to the 55 days type thing as well? I mean,
it shouldn't take us that long to input a placeholder. So basically,
I'm not saying that. I'm
no,
saying what if I'm on 54th day entering the application,
right?
And I noticed it.
Yeah. I want to get that in that within 5 minutes of you sending it to me. So that's why. Okay. So most of these vendors you've already seen. So as you're starting to work with these applications, if you do run into a new one, I would hope. I mean, yes, at 54 days, but I would hope that you just send that to me as soon as you see it. We get that put in, and you probably would have it ready before you even sent the claim at the end of the day. Or you could put the claims in at the end of the day. It wouldn't take us that long. So that's something we're pretty quick with, because we know how important it is. We don't want you to leave applications just waiting for us, but we hope that as we go into the 2023 season, you've seen most of those vendors. So most of those vendors should have placeholders. If you didn't see it, I saw it monitoring. So, I mean, I've looked at a lot of vendors, so hopefully it's there.
Okay.
And
Thank you.
I think, how do I say this? I think I just want to stress that water should be just as important as EAP. These funds need to get out. And so, yes, we built this program to be piggybacking off of EAP, but these applicants and applications and claims should not be secondary and should not be a second thought. They're just as important because they're the ones more than likely, they're at this point, they're the claims that you guys have probably gotten calls about. Because some of them have gotten kind of pushed to the side. The water program's kind of been, not everywhere, but somewhat kind of a second thought. So, yeah, if you see a vendor you've never seen before, just email it to us that second, if you can, just send us the name and we'll get on it for you. We're happy to do that because it's easier to do that than to wait till the end of the season when you have 20 vendors that are sitting on a list of non-participating when we could have been working on them all year. So again, that's not everyone, and it's not pointing any fingers by any means at all. But I'm trying to help facilitate the movement of the program. You see a new vendor that you've never seen, email us. Now, that doesn't mean that we're going to be able to bring them on. We can only do so much too. We're trying hard. But there's some of them that just are impossible. But just know that we're doing our best. Most of the vendors that you send us, we make contact with at least 5 to 10 times. It just depends. And some of them, we still may not get in touch with the right people, but that's where you can come in too. If you know the best contact at the place, like if it's someone that handles all of the utilities for the entire county and them, name drop. I think that's just fine. So, okay. Leah, I'm going to let you kind of, if you don't mind, parse through the chat while I go on. Well, you may need to go on. See if there's anything we need to. Yeah, you go ahead. I'll talk vendor communication.
No,
If
I
you-
think
I
they're making,
I
I think there's
actually,
some good points in the chat. And
Okay.
so, I mean, this is going to be, as much as you don't want it to be trial and error, reading some of these, does make sense. As far as the automatic claim and the status changing and things like that, I encourage, internal processes and internal tracking as far as those go. But I will say that there are ways that we can pull reports when these bills, vendors become active so that you can see what applications have that new claim. So there's a way to do that. As far as the automatic claim, I would just say that if you guys do not want to do that, you wouldn't enter the information, and you just make sure that you guys have internal processes to track those applications to go back in and do it by hand. As far as the status, I'd have to read into that or talk to Rowing and figure out what the actual process of that is, of automatically changing status, because I don't know.
Okay.
But IHCA would not be the one to update those statuses. So, but before the start of the season, I will have that a little bit more clear for you guys so we can figure that out.
Yeah, there's several apps that we're going to have to figure out what happens to them now that they are sitting there with non-participating vendors. How long do we let them sit there? That kind of thing.
Ingrid, do you have a question?
Yeah, go ahead, Ingrid.
I do, for clarification. So when we have an NP vendor, we still would put the claims in that we'd approve the client, have the information in as, Walkerton non-participating. And we would even add the claims to that automatically, and they would just, when I run the transmittals, that would be on a transmittal. And then when Walkerton comes on board, that would automatically be switched to the participating vendor. And then what you may need to follow up with Rowing to see what that would do with the those claims that have been on a transmittal. But am I correct that we would be entering the claims into the system and then the vendor is just non-participating, and when you switch them, when you have the MOA, then the claims are already there?
Are you saying that you have done that? Are you asking me if that's what you're doing moving forward? Because I was under the impression that you cannot add a claim if the vendor is non-participating. You can only add the current charges and previous balance in the sections in dwelling.
I
right?
have not been doing that, but I thought we were supposed to do that going
You
forward.
don't enter claims. So the
Okay,
current charge balance and the previous balance that's listed in the water and wastewater sections, those pull based on the matrix from that section. So that's more of what I'm thinking. That would be where the automatic claim numbers come from, is from that dwelling section. I've only seen a couple of agencies that actually do that. So if any of the agencies that do that want to come forward and explain how they do that, that's fine. But like I said, I will figure out the exact process from rowing just so we can give that accurate information. And if that's not something you want to do, you just would have to have internal process to track those applications and do them by hand as what we've done this past season.
well,
But
I would
it's just
prefer
there's a
if we could
matrix involved.
automatically do it.
Yes. Yeah. So let me get some clarification on that, because like I said, you guys have brought up some really good points in the chat, so I don't want to give any confusing
Mhm.
information because I don't look at it from that side anymore. So I
Yeah,
don't know.
and so, and I
Okay,
would say
thank
like,
you.
my kind of thought, Ingrid, like my brain because again, I don't see the same as you, and with Leah and being on the same side of you as you all in the past, my thought was, if I was doing intake, and I don't know if this is possible, I would be putting in what was on the bill. I would be putting in what they should be getting if the vendor was participating on the dwelling tab. Then once they became participating, then you would push through the claim. But I don't know that my terminology in my brain works the correct way as rowing. I don't, and I see Elaine shaking her head, so I don't think it does. But if that was possible in some way where you could have it basically all set up because you're getting all that intake information, you have the bill sitting in front of you, you're able to say, okay, if that vendor was participating, they should get $85.95. And then, at least your work is done up front. So then when that vendor comes on, that's less work for you when it happens. That would be ideal, but I just can't speak on if that is how it happens. So that's definitely something we have time to figure out. So that's the other thing. It's not like we don't have time to make sure that if that's a way it can happen, it can happen. Because I would like it to be as smooth as possible. It's just hard because we know that all of the energy and EAP vendors have been on for so long that this just isn't something that we've dealt with in terms of EAP Connect and vendors coming on board. So, but I do want to make sure we have time to at least look at the matrix and kind of visualize that. So I do want to make sure you understand, no matter what, I'm not going to leave you hanging on any of this stuff. We'll make sure that all questions are answered and make sure that there's some best practices or strategies that we can provide, or like another additional training, or any more additional monitoring tools that we can provide as we get closer to the season coming up. But we just kind of want to go through things that we've seen so far and just kind of basics as we go forward. But here's some of the vendor communication strategies that I was also talking about. Just make sure that the vendor, if you are contacting the vendor, that they are actually, providing you the correct information, because what we were seeing a lot throughout this last year was that the vendor was providing incorrect information that was literally contradicting the bill that you all had in hand. And a lot of times it was because they were giving you the amount that was due at, say, that current time that you were calling, as opposed to the time at application. So really have to make sure that you guys are sticking with the the time of application. So create a question for your intake staff to use when they call. Just something simple like, can I please get the balance on client X as of the X date? And that X date should be the date of application. Does that make sense? And that's the only way we can stay consistent, because we don't know when you're going to be looking at the bill. We don't know when the vendor's going to come on. So the only way to remain consistent is to make sure that we're using that bill at time of application, whatever bill they provided. Okay. All right. I think Leah, we won't go through the calculation tool because she has, I think, provided it several times and kind of provided some one-on-one, but I know she's always willing to do that if you need it. But this again is only needed if the bill is not broken down. If you have the line items there, you don't need to utilize this. And if you need it, we can send it to you. If you don't already have it, we can send that to you. The table with the unallowable charges can be edited, and you can use your own terminology, whatever terminology your typical vendors use. If it's trash or garbage or whatever it is that they use, you can change it to that, to assist your own staff with their basic understanding of how that tool can fit in with you. The bottom of the page can be used for documentation purposes if you do not use the calculation tool. So you can utilize it in other ways. It doesn't just have to be that calculation portion, but that's up to you. The most beneficial situations for use are payment plans. I think that's probably what sparked us to come to that. I went to Leah saying we're having a lot of problems with payment plans, and so she created this to utilize for payment plans. And then also then it kind of led to her making it so you could use it with bills that contain the unallowable line items and then high bills as well. So it's kind of become a multifaceted tool, and it's been great. She's shared it at the national level. So if that tells you anything, that should tell you that it's highly recommended to be used, because it's also being used at by other states, and it was highly highly received. So. All right, appeal process. Again, back to lining up with EAP. Everything goes through EAP appeal first because they're EAP applications, unless it's a specific problem with the water determination, the benefit for water. And then it is only a water application and never went through the EAP process at all, which again, especially coming into this next year, that should not be the case. And then they have 30 days to appeal, and it's the same as EAP until it gets to the IHCDA manager involvement, which it comes to me instead of Tom. Vendor MOA. I just wanted to touch on this a little bit. Obviously, this it goes along with the non-participating vendors. We have 210 participating currently, so we still have a long way to go. You know, if this hopefully becomes a permanent program, but we're looking at still on our contact list of over 750 vendors. That's a long way to go. But you know, I don't think that any of them see the MOA as a huge restriction as to coming on board. It's just a lot of them have lawyers. And so it's not that it's got a lot of terminology or things that prevent them from coming on board. It's just there's a lot of other people and eyes that have to see it. So it does take a little bit longer. So, but like I said, make that connection if you can, and we'll do our best. And it's also, I think, important just to know these main 4 consumer protections, just as the LSP, because if anything, these are the 4 that hold them up. The application of the funds to the household, they have to apply the funds directly on behalf of them. Which is not any different than any other program, I would say. They have to be able to provide written reconciliation if we ask for it to prove that they did apply it to the correct household. They can't do any adverse treatment. They can't charge them anything. They can't, charge a fee for participating in this program or anything like that. And then the biggest one has been the restoration of service. A lot of them actually thought that the IURC was less stringent on them than we were, but that's not the case. IURC, they have to be turned back on within 48 hours. We are 3 calendar days. So once they have that, so that's not the pledge, but once they actually have the funds from IHCDA, they have to have it, back, restore any disconnected services within 3 days. So again, that's all in the MOA. So doesn't necessarily have anything to do with you, but just something to be aware of if you speak with vendors on terms of the MOA. Utilities and rent. This one is going to be a big change for this year, not necessarily to affect you, but a big change in terms of how it is in the state plan and for Indiana and IHCDA. So the IRA application portal will be closing on July 29th, which is the end of this week at 5 p.m. IHCDA will continue to process applications which are in the queue until funds have been exhausted. Hoosier renters in need of assistance can still visit indianahousingnow.org to apply before July 29th at 5 o'clock. We will update you when we have more on how this affects us, because according to HHS, we have to be equitable in how we apply funds to those who have their utilities and rent. So we will give you more as it applies to you. All right, and I messed up. That is supposed to be, that's just supposed to be right there, the date of August 2nd. That was just all that was supposed to be. Any rowing questions, those will be moving forward. I actually want to hold off on this Q&A and just look at the matrix real quick, because I think that's more important. We need to make sure we look at that before we end the session. We have a half hour left. So I'm going to go ahead and pull the matrix up as it looks in a form way, but we know that you guys will be getting it, you're going to have it taken care of in the in EAP Connect. Let me. All right. How ugly is this? Can you guys see it? I see Brad squinting. Let me see. Okay, this stuff you guys know. You don't need to really know. Hang on, let me get over here. So in general, this should look, the top part should look pretty familiar. This is just your normal SMI calculations. That's the same. What you're going to start finding differences in is the points. Our point system, because we're not as high of bills, is not going to be as high as the EAP program. So you see here where EAP usually has, I don't know, like 8, 6, 4. I don't want to guess here, but higher points than 3, 2, and 1. That's what we have. So for our income, I'll just kind of start down here, actually. So you see our categories are income points, household size, current water charge, and that is to exclude unallowable charges, an automatic adder for at risk. And then you'll see we have a few more down here that we'll talk about as well. And then I've got all of the explanation down here, so we'll go through that. With this basic point system, the most that a household can get with getting 3 with the highest income or the lowest income, 5+ household members, a current water burden is kind of what we're looking at with this current water charges. It's kind of like, what's their current burden? What are they looking at on their current bill? Not their arrearage, but their current bill of $151 plus for 3. And then if they added on the at-risk would be $250. So that's on top of their, what we're calling their crisis water or crisis wastewater. Okay, so these crisis water and crisis wastewater are kind of defined as their arrearage. And like I said, I'll scroll down and show you all of these as they're defined, but I kind of wanted to look at this first. But up here, everything's worth $25 per point. So again, 10 points is the max up here. So the most they could get is $250 for that. If their wastewater is a separate vendor, they get an automatic $50 to go to that separate wastewater vendor. Because if not, we don't have a way to do that without doing a whole separate matrix. And I wasn't going to do that to you. Okay. And then again, how much are they in arrearage for water? And if it's separate, how much are they in arrearage for wastewater? Again, we know the EAP Connect system does this for you. I just want you to see kind of the basics of what is making up the matrix. So I'm going to scroll down a little bit here and give you the kind of the nitty gritty on how it makes this up. So I don't think the income, I don't need to go through that. You guys know income. So there's that. Household size, we know that's pretty basic. 5+ members, I think it is good. So there's that. Current water charges. So you know how when we started this program, the legislation had written in that we have kind of like 3 buckets. They kept saying buckets that we were trying to hit. And the first was like that kind of crisis, like past due arrearage amount to take care of them and get them kind of back on track. So we've already got that. We know we're getting that taken care of. That's not going away. That's our crisis. We're still taking care of that. So no matter what, if someone has a past due balance, we're still taking care of that. But the good part about the matrix is they don't have to have a past due balance for us to help. So now pretty much anybody who qualifies for EAP qualifies for water and will get help. That's the biggest thing. Everyone should get help now. No more calls saying I qualified for EAP, but I didn't get any water money. Why? Now they should get some water money because they should at least get $50. Okay. I'll show you that again once I go back up. But that other area that they were saying that they wanted us to try to hit on if we could was to use a matrix and do a current water burden, which was to look at, those higher bills across the state to try to help lower their monthly burden. So kind of how we looked at it was we're seeing our individuals waiting and it's not really answering the water burden, but for us specifically, we're saying they're typically waiting about 3 months from the time that they apply to the time that they see any money hit their account. So what can we do, in terms of these current water charges and water burden that can make it all fit, and kind of help them through that, I guess, too. So it's kind of like hitting it in 3 ways. So yeah, so that's kind of another way that we're doing it on our own for Indiana, but not necessarily. It's kind of a our own thing that's making us feel like we're helping Hoosiers even more because it's helping our own system. So it's also doing the legislation part that we know we need to do, but it's also looking at what's actually going on in Indiana too. So we kind of looked at the bills that we've had over this past year, and that's where we came up with kind of this this current water charge amount. So, 3 points, if their bill is more than $151, then that gives them 3 times 25, which is $150. So that'll go towards their current water bill. Takes care of their current water bill. This is very important. Make sure that the water current charges are the total charges excluding the allowable charges, and all partial dollar amounts are to be rounded down. So for example, $50.86 would be counted as $50. And that's just in order to promote consistency and eliminate any uncertainty or confusion. It just was either let's round down or let's round up, and we did round down. All right, at risk, that's pretty straightforward because you already do that with EAP. So you award 1 point, that's an automatic $25. And then the total points are here at the bottom. It just is a summary of everything. You add all the points in each category for the total points, multiply that amount by $25 per point. And again, the max would be $250. The minimum is $50. And then enter the amount of any crisis benefit that the household is to receive. And again, that definition is down here. Crisis is just the amount past due minus the unallowable. So it's just what you've been doing this whole past year. It's just basically the arrearage amount. And then if the wastewater vendor is not the same as the water vendor, you add $50, and that $50 is to be sent to the wastewater vendor on the applicant's behalf. If it's the same vendor, add $50, or I'm sorry, add $0 because it's already going to be a part of the water part. And then you add the amount of the benefit from the awarded points and the crisis, if applicable, to determine the total IWAP benefit. And once again, EAP Connect takes care of this, but if the computer system would all fail and everything would go down, then we'd know what we were doing. So we tried to make it as similar as we could to EAP with similar categories, but of course we can't do things like bulk fuel. We can't do the dwelling. So we did things like household size and the current water charges. So what are your thoughts?
Ingrid, I saw your question, and that goes back to the dwelling section and making sure that if they do not have a sewer charge or sewer bill, that's blank. If they do, that it's input, and that will change that from 0 to 50 depending on what is in that section. So nothing should be done by hand, but I do ask again that internal processes make sure that intake is double checking these numbers, because it comes back to making sure that that section in the dwelling is correct.
Brad, go ahead.
Okay, so the water matrix is for water only apps.
No, it's for the water portion of the application. So
Okay.
EAP water, whatever.
Okay, so I was taking under the impression when we're entering the data in the dwelling tab as current or past due, those would be the claim amounts. Now you're saying they're going to get points, $25 a point for income, household size, current water charges at risk, but we're not supposed to give them a positive balance or credit balance. So this is like confusing me a little bit.
I
So in
understand
order-
that.
oh.
Go ahead, Leah.
I was gonna say, so in order to bypass the issue with the current charges, we needed to create a matrix. Like we cannot, like, so this is our way of, so when Ashley is saying purposefully, this is our way to get past it. You're doing it with a matrix. So it doesn't, I don't want you guys to get hung up on there being an overage, because this is why we put a matrix in place. For some reason, that is what causes us to be able to be allowed to do that. So
OCS.
So,
This is OCS.
so there will be an overage no matter what.
on
Yes.
When
some
we're-
people's bills,
N-
some
yeah,
of these
not
were,
on
I've
all.
tested this on multiple applications. Some of them do
Mhm.
not get an overage
Yeah.
because of that current water charge section. Some of them don't. I know that sounds weird. Some of them don't, some of them do, but that's okay because we have a matrix.
Okay, so my last question was, when we pull the reports,
Mhm.
we pull a letter, we pull the application, we pull the matrix to include those 3 documents in our file. So when I pull a matrix off of EAP Connect, I'm gonna have one matrix for EAP and water.
No, they'll
No.
be separate.
There's gonna be 2 separate matrices that
Yes.
we're gonna have to print.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And Ingrid, you've had your hand up for a while. I'm so sorry. What is your question?
Sorry.
No, I just forgot to put my hand down. I'm
Oh.
sorry. I muted myself, but I forgot to lower my hand.
So, what you're saying back about the dwelling section. So this is still what you guys are doing with EAP. So in that sense, it's not really different. You're still, the previous charge is your charge. So where you see crisis water and crisis wastewater, that's where those amounts are coming from. It's from those previous balances under the water and wastewater section in the dwelling section. Does that, so those are still your crisis. Your
Arrearage.
previous balances is your arrearage, is your crisis. Your
Mhm.
point system is giving you a point system based on the metric or the matrix and what we're going to give them additional with that current charge section being a factor. So that section's still important regardless of, I mean, it works hand in hand. So both sections still need to be filled out.
Yeah, because essentially what's happening is if we left it the same, we would just be buttering along and not helping as many people as we could. We would only, because we could only still help people with past due balances. HHS said if we put a matrix in place, then we could focus on reducing burdens on households, which to them means helping with current bills. So though the burden, which in talking with Tom is why I was kind of worried about terminology. The current burden to them means something very differently. So very different. So the burden essentially meaning let's help them take care of their current bill as well. But in doing so, we may have to cause a credit, but that's okay because we're not purposely doing it. It's just a result of like time and processing and that kind of thing. So HHS has said to do it this way, so that's why we're okay with saying, and then they literally said, as long as it's not purposeful and you're helping with relieving a burden so that they can put that money towards something else during this difficult time, then we're okay. Does that make sense, Brad? I see you shaking your head, so, okay. Yeah, it's all about terminology and, tiptoeing and making sure you do things in the confines of the grant and the funding. So, Rosa, why don't you go ahead?
I got 2 questions. One, would it be possible for either of you to demonstrate how this will work in EAP Connect? I know you guys have limited access. I did hear Leah say she tried it on several applications and some did get an overage and some didn't. I think some of us, if we see it, we might understand it and how these numbers kind of plug in together. And my second question is that $50 for the different vendor,
Mhm.
where do we place that or does the system automatically place it? I know you said they get it, but are we supposed to enter it in the dwelling and where?
So these are very good questions. And rowing is building this still. So while they have the coding pretty much already because it already existed for EAP. When we say we've tested it, we're testing it like in a spreadsheet and those kinds of things. So yeah.
So kind of like an EAP where you guys are prioritizing the heating benefit with the secondary benefit being electric. We're prioritizing the water benefit with the secondary benefit being the sewer. So it's just like electric getting that set balance that they've gotten over the last 6+ years. That's what we're doing with water and sewer. We're just giving $50 to sewer plus their crisis or rearage.
Right, but
Mhm.
in the
It
dwelling,
does it, you will not put that in. You'll put the crisis in or the arrearage.
okay. So for example, if I have a Indiana Water and a
Mhm.
wastewater bill,
Yes.
Indiana Water gets put in as normal with
Mhm.
the arrearage amount, if available, and with the regular amount.
Mhm.
And then when that one gets approved, it'll add the arrearage and whatever. But
Right.
when I go to my wastewater, I will put,
You'll do the same thing.
what if they don't have arrearages? Where does that $50 go? I guess that's where I'm trying to figure out.
So if they don't have arrearages, they're just not getting their crisis technically,
Yeah.
but they're gonna get the $50, but you're gonna put that in there. So it's gonna say $0 previous balance and whatever balance current charges. But because you're inputting the sewer information into the sewer section, it's automatically gonna give that $50 claim. If you leave the sewer blank because they do not have a sewer bill, it's gonna register into the system as a $0 for sewer.
Okay.
Just like so, and they wouldn't get previous balances either. But yeah, you leave it blank, it's 0. You input anything into that, any vendor into that, it's $50 because
It'll
that's where,
automatically create it then.
yes,
Okay.
or it'll create the kind of
The
like how you
$50
had the
claim.
hanging balance and you just input it. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, because I
Mhm.
kind of want to see where that $50, if we have to
Well,
put it in,
yeah,
or
where it
do,
would
or
be
will
to
it?
show you to do it. Right.
Because
Yeah.
for EAP and for even water, once we enter those claims in there and hit approve, it gets created.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
that's where I'm confused how those $50 are going to get created.
Yeah.
Are we putting in $50 in somewhere?
So
Or we put
No,
the wastewater vendor name and everything and we hit approved and the $50 is created.
So however you're doing it for energy assistance with the electric getting the 125 is exactly how you're gonna do it with the sewer. Does that make sense?
I don't know
Yes
that
and
they're
no,
doing it yet.
because with the energy assistance, it automatically creates it.
Okay, then that's what
Right,
it'll
so
do.
that's what, yeah. So
Okay.
that's
Okay.
what
Yeah.
this should be the same algorithm. That's,
Okay.
again, we're asking rowing to do pretty much the same thing, so that is what our hope is.
Yeah.
That is the same way that electric works, so. I hope
Yeah.
that
Yeah. So as long as you're putting in, the biggest thing is that the system needs to see on the dwelling page that there are 2 different vendors. In that, when you're putting that there's no arrearage, then, that's designating no crisis, that's fine. But then Now the fact that there's a separate vendor for wastewater, it will know, the system will automatically know, like it does for electric, that it needs to do the $50 separately to go directly to that wastewater vendor. Because if not, then we had no way for the wastewater to get, you know, kind of a piece of all of this itself. So trying to go back to the chat now. I think I've wrapped up. I've wrapped up everything in terms of the slides.
We'll get total charges excluding.
And like I said, anything to do with EAP Connect, any trainings, as Tom said, we will have a to be determined training for that coming in the future. Again, tomorrow you still have the rest of the training with Tom, and then finance. I don't know which way it's going. And he is on a board meeting currently. So, and then the water and EAP session, both Q&A session will be on August 2nd from 1:30 to 3:30. So that will happen. And then, like I said, Leah, if you want to help me go back through the chat here, that would be great.
Okay, so I do see a question in the chat asking for Renee to confirm that they do not need to print both matrices. So I will go ahead and ask Renee just to do that real quick.
We can always, some of these questions, since we have time tomorrow as well, we can come back to.
Okay, so am I answering it?
Yeah.
No, that's up to you.
Oh,
I didn't
okay.
know. Yeah, no,
Please.
go for it.
Like,
I
didn't know.
No, go for it.
Okay. So Brad, as you know, EAP Connect automatically created you guys's notification letters and things like that. I know that there was an issue for notification letters for water, maybe. Am I correct in saying that? Okay.
Yes, but it's
So
corrected.
I know they're in the process of getting that corrected. So my stance, and maybe Leah can agree with that, is that you guys don't have to print those out again, because if it's automatically created in the system, then it's already there.
Ingrid here, can I throw something out?
Yes.
Okay,
Definitely.
so one of the reasons, and I may be wrong, but one of the reasons we print out the matrices is because we have to have 2 records of an application. And so one is the hard copy and one is the one that's uploaded into the system. And so to me, what I have in the system should be the same thing that I have in a folder. And so we do print out the matrix because it is part of the hard copy application that we keep. And then the other copy of the application is what is uploaded. And so in our case, we would be printing out the 2 matrices. I don't know what the plural is to that one.
Matrices.
Okay, thank you. And so that's why we would have that. But if you have 2 electronic copies of it, then you wouldn't be printing out the second one. But that's our reasoning for having that printed out.
Right. And I think that falls under the preference of the agency. So whatever your preference is, if you want that to be included in your upload, you can include that in your upload. But it's already going to be there.
So it's not a
completely up to you.
policy thing.
No.
Okay.
Nope.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
And then there's, just because this is the first thing I see about the screenshots along with bills for examples, just like I did last season, I try my best to make sure that I am giving you guys any tools that I can create or any ways that I can explain those things. So that will be something that I can do if Brad is not able to explain it, which I'm sure he will be able to. So yes, I don't see a problem with being able to do something like that.
I mean, Brad from rowing.
Right. He should,
course, gotta put Brad
he
Dukes
should be
to
able to
work.
give you a step by step, but if not, I definitely would know how to do that. So, rounding down, that's just the change. If it's
Yep.
$50.38, just put $50. If it's $60.02, $60, $60.98, $60.
Can I add to that real quick, just
Yeah.
to be clear on my end?
Mhm.
So if my bill says $62.05, I'm only adding $62 on that field for current.
Right, so it should, again, it's not gonna, yeah, so when you're double checking the points, it should already recognize it in that way. So yes, you're just gonna double check that the points are correct.
Will
And that
we
it
do
did
the
it right
same
in the
for the arrearage? Or is the arrearage to the penny?
No.
arrearage would be to the penny because it's
Yes.
crisis.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Sorry. Yeah, this is just for the matrix, for the current charge.
Yeah, just for that section, just to keep it consistent. It's just like, yeah,
Because, yeah, rounding tends to be like, oh, should I round down? Should I round up? It can be, and some people round differently. So it's just, let's all round down so that there's no,
yeah. It's not
No
rounding
ambiguity.
for the benefit. It's only rounding so that that section is able to give you a correct point.
yeah, that's just this section only, the current water
Yes.
charges.
Thank you.
And it really doesn't, it doesn't affect anything on a large scale. It's just to fall into these categories. So 5086 would be counted as 50, so it's 50 or less.
And then, sorry, I'm looking through the questions.
It's okay. Me too. But the silence is also killing me.
Julie, do you have a question?
Yeah,
I
go ahead.
do. So it's about the $50 for wastewater. Is
Mhm.
that only if they have a separate bill? Or is it, so is that fair? Is that a little inequitable that it's,
No.
because for those water bills that also have wastewater on them?
Because if it's in the water bill, you'll see it up there billing here. So in essence, it kind of evens it out.
Okay, maybe. Okay.
I know. I mean,
I get what you're asking.
Go ahead.
No, we've talked about this and I get what you're asking, but we were just trying to find a base benefit that would, be a good starter, I guess, for wastewater. And we don't want to do too much as an adder benefit because I've obviously seen a lot of bills, but what I can conclude is that I don't see a lot of sewer separation. I see it, but it's just harder to determine whether we needed to do 50 or a little bit more. So we're going to do 50.
Okay, gotcha. But so for the ones that are all included on one bill, we're still entering them just under the water like we
Yes.
were last year. Okay.
Yeah, and then
thanks.
that would just be 0 for the wastewater adder because they wouldn't have a separate bill.
Yeah. And it will kind of up their current water charges. So kind of equals out.
We have to look at it as we're still taking care of their arrearages. This is just an
Mhm.
additional benefit. So that's why it's just 50 if that's separate.
Can I add something real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
Vincent's, here in Vincent's, they send out 2 bills, one for water, one for sewer.
Mhm.
So when the application says water assistance, all we're getting from the Vincent's clients or customers is their water bill.
So
So are we going to change the application where it's going to say water sewer assistance? Where we can get those sewer bills?
Right, so in that, I would ask, so if someone were to give you just a water bill, like, or not even just you, if somebody, another agency were to get just that water bill, is there anything on that bill indicating that there is sewer? Like, how would I know that they're getting sewer as well, unless that's already known knowledge by talking to the vendor? So it's kind of,
Right.
if you know it's there, you have to just get them
But
together.
it's not on the bill. It's just a water bill. But they
They're
also
just
get a
separated.
separate bill for
Right,
sewer. They don't put it
right.
into one bill.
So as a
So
customer service
as a
is like,
customer, when
mhm,
I'm doing my application, it says water assistance program. Doesn't
mhm,
say water sewer.
right, I get what
So
you're saying.
as a customer, I'm just going to give you my water information.
Right. I think that takes it to
So
the level for the LSPs and for intake that we have to really push that customer service to ask those questions to make sure that they're giving us the bills that they would be eligible to look at. Like if I am sitting down with a client and they hand me a water bill, I need to make sure that they don't have sewer too, if it's not on there. That's just something that I would work into my application process as an intake person to ask that question in front of them. And if I have to call or do whatever, or if I already know that they have both, then I'm going to ask for it.
okay, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, we'll take, Lisa Castle's got her hand raised, so I'll take that question. And I know we're a little after, so I want to be respectful of time. Go ahead,
Okay,
Lisa.
with what Brad Dukes just said about the client, and then in your explanation, Leah, you said when they're sitting in front of you, we're having such a big push to go to the electronic application and doing the mail-in applications. We really, and I know we're not seeing the clients as much face to face.
Right.
So when you're saying, ask the client this, ask the client that,
Yeah.
and I'm not saying just towards water and sewer, but I think we need to think about this on LIHEAP, LIWAP as a whole.
Right.
We're being pushed a different direction and the clients aren't in front of us. So
Right.
now we're going to be going back to saying, doing a lot more follow-up, touching applications multiple times because we don't have them in front of us.
Right.
So something's got to give somewhere along this way.
Okay.
And I was going to bring this up with Tom yesterday, but I didn't have a voice yesterday. I have a little bit of a voice today. But we've really got to address this at some point, because even a lot of in what was trained yesterday and the day before, you're going to be pushing us back to asking the client. Clients have not sent in as thorough of 12 pages of their award letters. They've not done that. So now there's going to be a much larger burden put back on intake again. And I'm super concerned about it. And I'm with Julie Wilson on the inequitable, because I do get your current water charges, but when electric is the heating, and when it's all under electric, they still get that extra $125 that they would have gotten if they were heated with something else. They still get that set 125 amount on top of what the matrix shows. So I think we really need to look at some of these things. I'm just a little concerned about some of the pushback, and again, the timing. Electronic applications push, and now you're
Yeah.
asking us to touch applications multiple times.
No, I definitely understand where you're coming from, and that is my fault because I like to forget that the last time I saw an applicant was before COVID. I did do the online applications right before COVID started, but I was also trained to call, and that we may not have had that volume, so I understand. But in that sense, if what I'm saying with that bill, if I were to get a water bill and I didn't call the vendor and know that they also got a sewer bill 2 days later from the same company, I would have just done the application, or you would just do the application. You wouldn't know. Now, if you do know that though, you put it on the incomplete letter. They don't submit it in 10 days, you do the application. Is
I
that
think,
fair?
I think what he's asking though is, can we put on the application
Yeah, I think that's some
to
Wastewater.
be
language to
requesting the
use.
water and the
The
wastewater bill,
wastewater.
not
Yes.
just water?
Yeah, that's an easy change that we can do. So I definitely understand that.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'll check into where all that is because it's obviously going to be multiple places, electronic, paper, all of that. So that will be my next step.
Handles the application to change that
Mhm.
wording. So
Right.
we would need to work with him to do that. But I
Mhm.
understand changing that language. It
Right.
makes sense.
Right.
I just more meant don't put extra if you wouldn't have known that they had that, Brad, which is very good if to get that information, you do know that. But I'm saying if you wouldn't have known, if I was monitoring, I would have been like, I know that they have sewer. Like I would talk to you first to let you know that they have sewer. But if they just brought you a water bill, you don't know that they have a random sewer bill coming from somewhere else or the same vendor. So
Well, I'm just saying, I'm gonna give them $50 if I can,
exactly.
$50 is $50,
Yeah.
Yeah.
so that's what I'm trying to
But
say
in that
is
case,
they
you
get
could lump them together if they're on the same vendor, not the 50.
right. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and my question was more about the language on the app and the
Yes.
online and all that, because if I'm a customer and I'm just seeing water, okay, here's my water bill. Don't know
Right.
nothing about sewer.
Yeah.
So
Right.
And then Lisa Castle, I know, like I said, it's already 3:08. I know I did say we could go over if we needed to, but I want to be respectful. So but I will say, so if you think about those that fall on this, no matter what, even if they aren't separate vendors or if they are separate vendors, the minimum they're going to get from the up here, I mean, they're still going to get a 1. They're still going to get a 1. So no matter what, they're going to get 50 from up here. So 50 here plus their crisis here, so no matter what, they get 50. Let's just say that. So that would be $50 here.
But the thing is, if they had wastewater as separate, the minimum they would get is 100. So you're not treating them equitably.
No, because then they would still be getting, if they had wastewater separate, then they would still have a water bill up here.
Yeah, yes, they would, but you'd get a 1 so you get a 1 from the income points, a 1 from the household members.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe their water bill is only $50 or less,
Okay.
so they'd still get 0.
So their
And they're
burden's
not
not
that,
high.
so they would get $50 up there, and they would get $50 on their wastewater
Uh-huh.
if they're 2 separate vendors. But if they're the same vendor, they're only getting $50, so it isn't equitable.
But if they're the same vendor, then that would be assuming that they should be having.
But it may not, because they may pay their bills on time. And I mean,
Well, then that's
I
down
don't
here.
think
Their arrearages are right here.
that's what I'm
So-
saying. If they're paying their bill on time and they have 2 separate utility
Mhm.
accounts, water and wastewater,
Mhm.
they'd get 50 on their water, 50 on their wastewater.
Mhm.
If they're the same company and they're paying their bill on time, so maybe the charge is still only the 50, I've saw some $36, $38. We're
Mhm.
still not, they're still not getting an equitable amount as compared to the person with 2 different vendors, because they would only
Right.
be getting 50.
I get what you're saying.
I
Because
get
I
what
get
you're
what when
saying.
you said it about the electric. I just don't know how we can how we would be able to make it work to make sense for water,
Yeah. Well, and the other
without
thing
giving
is
too much.
the reason for the reason or the bucket that we're making this fall in has to be to decrease their current water burden. And that's all. So it's not to like just give them money towards future bill, it's to reduce their current bill. So we have to look at their current water charge. And so the only way we could think to then address it if they had like wastewater separately was to do something like that. But also keep in mind, this is also not the final, final draft. This is, this is pretty much the final draft, but we, can still make changes if we need to. So
I would just encourage you to look at it and truly think about that and look at how it's done with the electric as far as equitability, because I don't want to see us have to come back later
yeah,
to make
but
changes
electric
because
and
of it.
gas are also a lot more costly. So we have
Well,
to keep that in mind.
well, sometimes.
Yeah,
Like
well,
sewer is much more expensive in a lot of our municipalities than the water is.
yeah, yes, we've seen that, which is insane. But there's no consistency on either of these across the entire state. So it's been difficult, period, to come up with amounts that would make anyone happy, to be honest.
But yeah, what I found in monitoring is that all these vendors that you guys are looking at, they're all very unique to your agency. So if you do have feedback on what you're looking at right now and you would like to send that to us, we can definitely put that into consideration before we make the final.
Yep. All right. Well, thank you for spending 13 extra minutes with us today. And thank you for going through a lot with us today. I know that water has been a lot of change this year, and I've been very happy to spend that with you. And I hope to just continue to grow with you all with it. So Tom will be back tomorrow with finance as well. So bring your finance people and we will see you back here again at 1 o'clock tomorrow. Tom, anything? I know you're back on, so anything you need to say before we go?
Nope, I just got back here from my board meeting, so I'm just kind of walking in on the discussion.
Yeah. The best discussion matrix. I mean, who doesn't love that? All right. Well, thank you all so much. And don't worry, we'll have more time for more questions. We're not ignoring any questions. Anything that we missed in the side, we'll also bring to the August 2nd discussion. But bring anything else you come up with, and we'll see you tomorrow for Tom's, and then again on August 2nd for questions for more follow-up to water. Thank you all.
Hey, Ashley, can you stay on real quick?
Yeah.
Okay. To what Lisa was saying about all that, you might want to take this into consideration as well about the wastewater and the 50.
Mhm.
I have a municipality that if they are in moratorium, they're approved. They're in moratorium. And they have to keep up on their water bill. Okay. If they've used all of their EAP credit and they are in delinquency for EAP, electric or gas, but has paid up on water, they will disconnect their water because they're not protected in moratorium.
Right.
So that $50 might help, I'm just saying.
Right.
But again, that's the client, and that's the policy of the municipalities, is if they run out of credit and they get a delinquent during moratorium, they will shut their water off.
Right.
Even though they're paid up.
That is something that honestly can be uplifted by the client, or I don't know if you guys want to be that active in it, but uplift to IURC, because they are not supposed to be disconnecting, just like they can't disconnect electric if water is past due. So I do understand what you're talking about, and that's something that's actually common, unfortunately. But the $50 that you're talking about, they cannot put that towards electric. So it's not going to make a difference in that situation anyway.
Well, that's true
Unfortunately.
too.
Unfortunately.
I was just thinking that it could possibly at least help them in some way on the wastewater side, because we're purposely giving them a overage. We're
not
type of thing.
purposefully. No,
Well,
not purposefully.
but you know what I mean. But and again, it's let municipal utilities is who it is. They do it all
Yes,
the time.
Right.
and
yeah.
that's not anything unusual that we've even heard about on the energy assistance side. You just need to make sure that educate the a lot of times what the problem is that the client is not educated um, on that to know that that is not proper action, so they don't have the ability to uplift it. I would definitely bring that to their attention if that comes into play, because they shouldn't be doing that.
Okay.
They all fall under IURC.
See, that's what I thought, and I thought it's in the MOA, but I'm not fighting with my vendors. I have good communication with them, and I'm just not going to fight with them. I always just say, okay, that's your policy, then that's your policy.
Yeah, but if you have someone that is doing that, bring it to our attention.
Yeah.
Okay, will do.
Especially Tom's been working, I mean, we all have, but Tom has really been working with the IURC to build that relationship. And while water and wastewater, there are very, very few regulated vendors. Obviously, that's not the same for gas and electric. They're definitely regulated. So,
Right.
but yeah, I mean, and I've like I said, I've been able to use teeth a little bit more lately by utilizing the IURC with the water vendors, just because they're actually it has been growing, and they do want to get a better control over the water vendors, because I mean, talking 750 plus water vendors across the state of Indiana, and only a handful of them are regulated. That's
Right.
kind of crazy. So they can't control price hikes. They can't control anything.
Right.
So.
All right.
Kind of,
have a good day.
yeah, you too. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.